Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Black by God Live. I'm your host, Crystal Good, along with my co-host.
John Kimmy Shabazz L. of the Shabazz Report.
And we're excited to be with you here tonight and pick up on part 2 with Reverend Watts. We got a big show. I know, John, you're excited about tonight. You want to talk to us a little bit about that?
Absolutely, Crystal. First of all, I want to give thanks to the ancestors, those predecessors which paved the way for many of us. I have many in my life, and you asked me to say something good, and I couldn't think of anything better than to be thankful for those that sacrificed for us to be here today, no matter what condition or status that we may be in life. So this is a time of reflection and preparation for a new year and a new life, and the life that those that have lost loved ones. There's a kernel of new life inside of each time we lose loved ones, right? So I want to say that there's a good thing inside of something that might appear bad, and I want to move on and say very quickly that I want to give a quick recap of last week with Reverend Watts on the show dealing with the racial inequality report, and I found it very interesting when we asked Reverend Watts specifically, what progress have we made since the 2010 report that was done on racial disparities and inequality back in 2010. The recent 2020 report was a report that I had to examine. I seen where Reverend Watts had wrote a piece in there, and I wanted to be able to press him on that to the extent that of our progress. And I got some answers from him. I want to give Reverend Watts an opportunity to go back in and speak again specifically on, because toward the end of the show, he began to comment that he had spent 25 years in government in terms of working policy toward the African American community, specifically there on the West Side of Charleston, and he had that experience in. My position was that we need to be able to get something tangible, and he talked about his 2020 program, where blacks in Charleston represented 20% of the population, and from what I understand, some of the coronavirus money that came in, he wanted to be able to get that 20% and set up the West Side of Charleston as a specific model, okay? And I hope I've laid the background for exactly where we're at today, because last week at the end there, he also mentioned the fact that, and I want to start here, that in directing our energies toward the private sector, he used the situation with the NBA and LeBron James when he said they had an opportunity there to garner some real policy toward the private sector. So in terms of making business respond to our demands, where we don't spend all of our energy in government policy. And Chris, do you have him on the line? I've done the best job I can in trying to recap this and set this up for us.
Yes, Pastor Watts is on the line. I'll let him respond, but I thank you for your good intention, and and I've asked Pastor Watts back to the show, and so glad that he's with us, and I've asked him to give us a recap, but to also open up with something good that happened this week. So, Pastor Watts, tell us something good that happened this week.
Well, I think something was wonderful. Even though we did not have our normal traditional Thanksgiving Day dinner, all of the Watts clan, the 17 people that are part of my clan, my 5 children, my 11 grandchildren, my wife. But we were able to do something a little bit different. It's really kind of fun watching my daughters. My daughters are like their mom because they spend so much time around their grandmother when they were small. They can just flat out cook. I mean, they really know their way around the kitchen. And so my wife is just an excellent cook, so they were stirring up, and they cooked up all this food, and then we had like a carry out, right? So they packed up all the food so everybody could come and we'd take the stuff out to them in the car. So we didn't get in the house, but we still had that the aroma that was circulating through the house from all the Thanksgiving food that was fixed. And then I had to spend time with my grandchildren. I mean, I can't stay away from them for so much and for so long, so I have to put my mask on when I'm around them. But they were here, and we had some time playing our little basketball game here in the house and doing some fun things. And so it was just a great time to get sort of rejuvenated with one of the great pleasures and joys of life, and just spending time with the people that you love, and that more importantly love you back. Because I believe the greatest success in life is that when the people you love the most love you back. That's about as close to heaven as we can get on this side. So that was about the Watts household.
Okay, that's beautiful.
Beautiful.
I want to respond to John. I'll tell a simple story. You know, I've been pastoring the same church for 26 years. I've been associate of the Grace Bible Church for 36 years, my entire ministry. I'm a son of grace. And so I came in one Sunday, and I'd been with my children on Wednesday night, and I asked them a simple question. What was the title of my sermon? And I was amazed. These kids, elementary school, a few junior high, they all remembered the title of my sermon. And then I asked them, I said, well, what illustration did I use? And they told me the illustration verbatim I used to illustrate my sermon. I said, well, what part of the Bible was I in? And they told me. I was so excited. So I came to church the next Sunday morning, and I stood in the pulpit, and I said, will everyone who can remember the title of my sermon last week raise your hand? Not a single adult raised their hand. Not one of them remembered. I said, can anybody let me know what exactly was my main point? Nobody raised their hand, right? So here's what I'm saying. Brother John Shabazz is an honorary member of my church forever because he laid out, right, in a marvelous economy of words, everything I talked about last week. And I'm just incredibly impressed with that and appreciate the attentiveness that he was given during our conversation. The one thing I will add just quickly before we get into some dialogue back and forth is what we were trying to do with the Hope 2020. We actually were trying to create a statewide template. And so there are actually 220 census tracts in West Virginia that have poverty rates 20% or higher. There's a total of 480 census tracts, but 220 of those census tracts have poverty rates 20% or higher. So what we were attempting to do was say, what if we were to take 20% of the $1.25 billion, which would have been $250 million, and then allocate it across those 220 census tracts. So each census tract would have gotten over $1 million. And those census tracts that butt up against each other, like on the west side, you have census tract 1, 7, and 8 that make us call the West Side Flats, Sister Chris, you understand that, and that's from North Charleston all the way down to Elk River. Well, those census tracts would have gotten over $3 million. And then they could have been invested in those census tracts. So that's what we were trying to do. We thought we could create the model and the template here. We want to create a funding pool, you know, for the whole state. So all these distressed areas could have gotten some funding. And we still think that is an idea that we should be pushing for with the legislature, that money be set aside and to create what we call, they could call it the Economic Justice and Equity Fund, to invest in these distressed census tracts. And because African Americans live in large concentration in census tracts that got poverty rates well above 20%, then money would come into those tracts, and nonprofits and small businesses could have an opportunity to get some of those resources to help to rebuild the community. So that's what we were trying to do with the Hope 2020 Economic Justice and Equity Fund. And the other point I'll just touch on lightly, then I'll let you guys kind of bounce some things back and forth. When I was talking about the private sector, and I was in a conversation earlier today, I try to remind people that the wealth of the United States of America, it is in the private sector. It is in these major private corporations. It is in private individuals who have a disproportionate percentage of the income. It is in these large private foundations. That's what the real wealth of this nation is. So I really felt that when COVID-19 hit and things were shutting down and these pro sports franchises were debating whether they were going to open, and then the George Floyd and Breonna Taylor murders, then created this backdrop to have this conversation about racism and about justice. And I really felt like that we had this nation a place that we've never had them in before and may never have them in again. And that is the pro sports, the billions and billions of dollars that flowed into pro sports. And they were going to play by hook or by crook. And so when Roger Goodell immediately threw up $200 million, the NFL was going to put up $200 million to help to do some things around racial justice. This is the man that vilified Colin Kaepernick. And now Odell was saying Black Lives Matters, right? And then when the NBA threw in $300 million, okay? And then when the makers of Aunt Your Mama's pancake syrup and Big Ben rice, they all wanted to pull the. I knew we had this nation, and what I was trying to suggest is that if LeBron James, his comrades could have used their leverage, they could have negotiated $1 billion into an economic justice fund from the NBA. Same thing could happen with the NFL, Major League. They could have went to all of these major sponsors, and that's who wants these games to be played because they want to continue to market their stuff at the American public. They could have went to the NCAA. Now here, the NCAA said that if schools were canceled, they wouldn't have no sports. But they send the kids home. They said that we're going to play these football games, we get the national championship play, and we're going to play the NCAA schedule. All of this stuff could have been leveraged to say, wait a minute, if you don't set money aside, the players say we're not going to play. And I'm telling you, we could have created an economic justice and equity fund for the whole United States of America. But unfortunately, we allowed ourselves to be pressured, and I think even President Barack Obama, he weighed in and encouraged them to play. But they had a negotiating position that's the strongest that maybe African Americans have had, maybe in the history of the nation. They could have negotiated billions of dollars to be set aside from the private sector, and then once the new administration gets in Washington, they could have continued to see that that's the level of thinking I'm trying to get people to kind of realize is that they asked one of those bank robbers, they asked them why they rob banks, right? And they said because that's where the money is. And so we got to look, where is the money? The government is taking out, right? And the government is giving these corporations all these big tax breaks and these rich people these tax breaks, so they got our money, these rich folk and these rich corporations. And then we go keep begging to the government, and they keep saying, well, we ain't got no money, and we broke, and we can break off a little bit of this, where at the same time, they're passing all these tax breaks and all these loopholes to these private companies and individuals, and that's what's going on. That's the point that I was trying to make the last time. And
yes, sir.
Maybe we could do, maybe at some point in the future this could happen, but we could use it as a model even locally in the state, right, to start talking about corporations and saying we need you to set up money and reinvest. That's the thought that I was trying to lay out, Brother John.
Well, I actually believe it or not, being here in Morgantown, West Virginia, I actually had a thought some time ago that I hear some feedback, and I don't think that's me. I hear something going on in the background there, but I was thinking for some time that the university should, do work in our growth and development, appropriate certain resources, a certain amount of resources out of their annual budget, and not just them, but others too. Other corporations and so forth. We have examples of that. I think, say Georgetown, where Georgetown did something specifically, but it was connected to slavery or slavery reparations. However, I think the disparities report and the slavery reparations thing are well connected with one another, extensions of one another. I don't know what position you would take on that, or either one of you would take on that, but.
Well, I'll jump in, John, and share.
Go ahead.
I think it's connected. Can you all hear me okay? Because I put my headphones on. So here's something I'm grateful for, and some good news. And I think I'm really happy that my kids kind of keep me up to date with technology. I'm kind of spoiled in that regard. my oldest son, Miles, is in technology, but he also got me into this app that's a beta. So it's a social media app, and it's called Clubhouse. Okay, and so if you do your Googles on Clubhouse, it's sort of this. It has become a very black space, and you have to be invited in. So, I'm not the cool kid. Miles is the cool kid that kind of got his mom in. And it's a place where you're able to have conversations like we're having. But, for instance, this week, people that are in the app are like T.D. Jakes or, Henry Louis Gates, just because, they're our fellow West Virginians. And also, journalists, political leaders, and you're able to just have one-on-one conversation in these rooms. They call them clubs. And so I'm super excited to be in there and really finding that, our West Virginia Black political issues have people are interested in them. We just don't necessarily have a bridge into them. So, I'm kind of, in this space, which is, you got to understand, Clubhouse is going to be, mark my words, it's the next Facebook, it's the next Twitter, it's the next Instagram, right? And so it's in beta, which means, they're testing it out, and I'm part of the people testing it. And, it will open up soon. It could change. But for right now, I'm using it for what it's worth. And I had an opportunity to have a conversation and sit as a moderator with Leo Smith. And Leo Smith is a former Republican, a Black Republican. You can give him a Google. He's got some weight behind his name. Pastor Watts, he was one of the thought leaders behind Americans for Prosperity, and is worked on, all the big campaigns and whatnot as a Black Republican. He's since, he has some word for, he's not a Black Republican anymore. He's an independent, but I learned so much from this conversation about reparations, and that there is truly, a movement, that this is not a far-fetched concept, and how that's moving. But also, the thing that Leo talked about that was connecting back to the private sector, and this is, when he's speaking from a national perspective, and I'm trying to make it make sense, in our West Virginia world. But the one thing that he mentioned that I thought maybe we could give some thought to, or Pastor Watts, you could think about how this connects to state policy, and that is that there are no Black PACs. There are no 501c4 organizations that can support policy or support candidates in West Virginia. I mean, I've never heard of them. I've never heard of or maybe you have, that have tapped into sort of a national PAC that supports Black issues, where we can actually have, momentum to put the messaging. And I think that's what's really missing in a lot of our work, because I'm trying to connect the dots, and I was a little frustrated earlier today because I can see from where I sit all the people doing things, right? And how disconnected they are from each other. And I think it's literally, from my marketing mind, a bit of a messaging. And that's why I'm trying to create, this platform through Black by God where people can come and get information. You don't have to agree with the information, but at least it's in one spot, where things are going on. So, the concept, what I wanted to throw out is about a PAC. Like, Pastor Watts, does this exist in West Virginia? Have you ever accessed or heard of anyone raising money or for a Black agenda through a PAC in West Virginia?
Not to my knowledge. I do not know of the existence of a Black PAC, and I've been hanging around the legislature for probably almost 25 years. But I do know, and I'm not at liberty to make the announcement publicly, I do believe that there are a group of African Americans that are currently putting together the plans to create a 501c4 and a 501c3 to do exactly what you're describing there. And I think that it's certainly something that is needed. I think the challenge that I have found, that we have a tendency, as I shared with you last week, we keep starting over. So some people will engage in the game, and then they think that nothing has gone on before they got there. So they will start over with an initiative, and before they really can build the type of support necessary to move an agenda, they move away and someone else comes in. What you got to do is you have to have continuity, and there is a cumulative effect, and you build relationships, with legislators. You establish some trust. You find some common ground, some common interest, and it takes time sometimes to sell an ideal and a concept to where they can see, well, I can not only get credit for this because I am the legislature, and ultimately I've got to introduce the legislation, but it's good policy. It's not going to cost me anything, and that takes some time to do that. For example, I'm encouraged. We think we have an opportunity to maybe move something this year on suspension and expulsion to be more robust than last year. So you covered last year. You wrote some excellent articles about what we were trying to do and get legislation passed to require the legislature to require the state schools board and the superintendent's office to develop a plan statewide and hold local superintendents and principals accountable. At the end of the day, we got sold out, by Senator Patricia Rucker, who had agreed to introduce the bill that we had drafted, and then she introduced the bill basically said that the state school board could study the data for 2 years, then come back. But a Republican legislator, Crystal, that was in the meeting that you covered, that you wrote your article about, after the legislative session, he called me and a few other people to meet with him, and he says, look, I've looked into this. This thing is as serious as you guys say it is, and now I see how it's not only affecting African-American children who have been suspended at twice the rate as whites, but 16,000 white children, mostly low-income whites, they've been suspended every year. So he says, I'm going to see if I can garner some support and we can get something done more substantive in 2021. So he's reached out to me again, and he's gotten some colleagues, and, they're going to take a stab at it. That's what people sometimes don't understand, how the process works. You got to build relationships. You got to make compelling ideas and compelling cases, and it takes time. It really takes time to do that. Before we get off, and I want to mention this so I don't forget, and you guys can make sure we come back to it. I really want to make sure we cover what happened this past week with the American Medical Association, the declaration that they made. I think it is incredibly significant for the whole country and creates a real opportunity for us here in West Virginia.
Yes.
Let's talk about it.
I know you were out there in California with all the rich and the famous people, but us poor country, we were kind of watching what was going on, and so you may have not heard that the American Medical Association made a major declaration last week, and the declaration was that racism poses a public health threat. It's a threat to public health. They went on to outline medical community, the way America's medical system has been developed, designed, executed, and discharged. It's had a desperate impact upon African Americans, and that the delivery of medicine in this country needs to change. It's a very, very strong and powerful statement. I posted a couple of articles about it on my Facebook page, so that's toward the top of the page, and you can read. Here's what I think.
Reverend Watts, I seen that. Not to interrupt you, but I did see that. And to veg you back on that, Wheeling, I know you're aware that Wheeling, a couple months before that article was released, they had issued, their city council, I believe, said that something up there said that racism was a mental health crisis. They declared it was a mental health crisis. Are those things that are symbolic or substantive? I mean, to answer my own question, they appear symbolic. Okay. However, they could be a prerequisite to actual substance. Okay. So could you speak to that? So we have this. We had something similar when we had all these states coming out apologizing for slavery. I don't know if you remember. I was out as a grassroots reporter in 2005, 2006. We had North Carolina and Virginia apologize for slavery. Okay. Yeah. To me, those are symbolic gestures, because it's like to say, "Well, I hit you in the eye. I'm sorry." Right. That's the end of it. That's the end of it.
At least I won't hit
That's
you.
The end of it. Go ahead, bro.
That's an insightful observation, and I think you're right on point with both of the statements you made. I think that some other states have done this, and some other cities, and you're right. I saw the article about Wheeling or reported on, and I think they are symbolic, but I think they crack the door, for us to come through saying, let's have some substance. Let's put some substance behind it. If you believe that racism is a threat to public health, mental health, and overall health and well-being of the victims of racism, then racism has been inextricably woven in the fabric of the American experiment, for 401 odd years. So a lot of damage has been done. So what are we going to do to mitigate what's already happened? We got to bring some relief to people that are living with the residual effect of it. And what are we going to do moving forward in terms of resource allocation and targeting resources into these neighborhoods? So what we have in West Virginia, and this is the first time publicly, I'm laying this out. You guys will get it first. What I'm trying to do is to get people to realize, okay, let's start a grassroots movement. And every local municipality in this state where there are black people living in that town, they need to go to their city council and they need to go to the mayor and say, we want you to make a declaration that racism is a public health issue. It's a threat to the public health, safety, and mental health of the people. We want you to do that. And here's the American Medical Association, the research and the science of why it needs to be done. And then we want you to create a committee. And we're going to look at how this city spends its money and where resources could be reallocated and repurposed. And we want to have a conversation about where other monies could possibly come from, federal grants, state grants, or whatever. But we've got to create a fund. Now we're saying that racism is a threat to public health, so we got to create a fund to address that. Then you go to at the county level, to the commissioners, or not Kanawha County, but the commissioners are the most powerful elected officials at the county level. They control all the resources that come in from the federal, state, and the federal government. And so we need you guys to do the same thing. And we've got to get money from the county level, and we got to get some of this money allocated into these areas within the county that have a high black population. Thirdly, then we need to get everybody together, fraternities. They need to pass resolutions, sororities, lodges, clubs, all the church denominations, all the churches, the synagogues, the mosques, everybody pass a resolution that racism is a threat to health, public health, mental health, and our overall well-being, and basically go to the governor. We want you to issue an executive order, Governor, to this effect, that this is a threat to public health. We need for you to say to all of your secretaries and all those people, we got to look at where there's funding that is available that can be directed to address some of the problems that have been created by racism. That's an opportunity we have. I want to send you a packet of information, and I've put together a string of newspaper articles that's been in the newspaper over the last couple of years about the health disparities and all that type of stuff. And it's also the latest article about Amelia Nicely, which we might want to touch on, Crystal, that came out the Monday following our last broadcast. But that is the plan. Let me tell you why we should do that, because they're going to have some type of legislative session, right? And what I was trying to tell some of my colleagues today, that what we have to do, I'm scared of the ocean. It's almost Atlantic Ocean when I was 12 years old. That's another story. But I love to watch surfing, because when I almost drowned, there were some white surfers who saw me and my cousin almost drown, and they came and saved us. So I started to watch surfing on television. So then I realized what happened. It still is, the surfer's motto is feel the wave, see the wave, catch the wave, and ride the wave, right? You got to feel it, and then they got a sense to kind of feel that something's that's moving beneath the water. You got to see it coming, you got to catch it, and you got to ride it. That's the approach I take to trying to shape politics. We got to feel what's going on, what's happening around us. We got to see an opportunity emerging, and then we got to jump on it, and we got to try to catch it. So I was trying to tell some of our colleagues today, for the next year in West Virginia and around the country, COVID-19 health is going to be an issue we're going to be talking about, right? And so now the American Medical Association has given us something that we've never had before, a statement from the top medical association in the country and one of the top in the world. They're saying, John and Sister Crystal, in writing, they're saying what black folk have known for 401 years. This is killing us.
Right.
It's killing us, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
and you people might be paranoid, but this racism is killing you. It's getting beneath your skin. Your high blood pressure, your cardiovascular disease,
yes, sir.
The health complications. Not a figment of your imagination, and it's not purely genetic. It's the environment that this has created. We've got to ride this wave, and we got to beat this drum because it's affecting every black person in the United States, right? A quick anecdotal story. I almost died years ago. Never been sick in my life. Been in the hospital one time when I was 12 years old. I broke my arm, and they kept me overnight. They thought I had to do surgery. I feel a chest pain on October the 6th, 2018. I get up. I said, I don't get chest if they raw eggs. I don't eat raw eggs. I get up, take a quick shower, and get dressed, and then I wake my wife up and say, look, I'm not feeling like myself. I didn't want to alarm her. I said, you called 911. I want to go in the wagon. I want to go in so they know, okay, we better check this brother out. Long story short, they do all this nitroglycerin, take me to the hospital, Brother Shabazz, put me in the corner at Charleston Area Medical Center, over in the corner. The paramedics who brought me in, they said, we don't think he's having a heart attack. And I'm saying to myself, well, what medical school did they go to? I sit in the corner for almost 5 hours, getting worse, right? Finally, they come to my wife and say, we take an x-ray, did all this stuff. We don't think he has a heart attack. They almost killed me because they gave me an opioid, which I had never taken before, right? And all the pain went away. And at that point, I told my wife, I said, look, I'm not talking to no one else in this hospital. You call my good friend, Dr. James Stanton, who's a member of my church in the cardiologist. They wouldn't call him because he had been on call that night. You called him until he could get over it. He came here in 5 minutes. He examined me, looked at the EKG, and he went ballistic. He said he's having a heart attack. And he immediately rushed me into the lab. Now, they didn't want to talk to me about it, right? Here I'm just a black in there, and you know, he look healthy and this, that, and the other, and so forth. I could have died right there in Charleston Area Medical Center, right? Could have died right there in the hospital. It was my first-hand experience of how you can be treated. And I came in with insurance, right? I came in. And this is the funny part. This is funny. It's funny in retrospect. So when they're undressing me to take me into the cat lab, the lady says, well, at least you smell good. And I wanted to say something really smart, but I didn't because I'm sick and I'm in pain. So I'm saying, man, this is something like this. And then,
but that makes it.
Dr. George came back to me.
I'm here. Go ahead, Crystal.
Go ahead.
The doctor in charge then came back to me, Sister Crystal and Brother Shabazz, and he said one of the smartest things. He said, "Well, I guess you get special treatment," because Dr. Stanton had called him to speak to him, and he says, "Look, that's my pastor." He said that man's arm could be almost falling off, and he might not go to the emergency room. If he's in there, something's wrong with him. And I said to the doctor, I hope I'm getting some special treatment. I hope that somebody's going to give me some special treatment. I'm certainly not getting down here and laying up in the corner of this hospital. So there are major problems with how medicine is delivered, of how black people are treated in many cases when they come into the hospital. And I had my own... Specifically black men.
I'm aware, I got my own story that I'm not going to share with you that happened to me back when I was 18 years old dealing with, this happened in Pennsylvania, but it's similar to your story that they kind of like laughed at the, didn't deal with me effectively just because I was a black male. Okay. And I suspect that others have their story to share as well. And I also have stories, anecdotal information from black women talking about the fact that they got deficient treatment from the healthcare systems, whether they be in West Virginia, Virginia, or Pennsylvania.
it doesn't have to be anecdotal. I mean, the data is there. I mean, West Virginia has the highest infant mortality rate, right? So it's off. Black infants are 2 times as likely as white infants to die during their first year of life in West Virginia. It's just so these are not this is the reality, and the stories go back to, right, this assumption, right, back in the day that black people can endure more pain. We have the evidence of this at the American Medical Association and doctors all the way through, the women that were used, whose bodies were used in the most cruel ways I can't even imagine, to create forceps and to, without anesthesia doing surgery. I mean, all this history is coming out, that I think is relevant. But Pastor Watts, I hear you about, and I love that analogy about catch the wave and ride the wave and feel the wave, and we got to do something. So what's going on? We know weeding has come. Has there been any conversation in Charleston about Mayor Amy Goodwin to recognize racism as a public health issue?
Yeah, could you repeat the question? I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear the last part.
No. I was just saying. So when you said feel the wave, see the wave, catch the wave, ride the wave, I love that analogy. But is there some momentum in? We know Wheeling has addressed racism as a public health. Has Charleston, Marion Huntington? I mean, is this? I mean, and let me just ask you this also. I just want to get this out real quick, because I think that there is a true disassociation across the state, that sometimes we talk about, and leadership does this all the time. Charleston is Charleston, right? And what happens in Charleston is not, a statewide issue. And so then it's sort of like Morgantown is Morgantown, Fayetteville is Fayetteville, Huntington's Huntington, and it's all this, division. And I'm trying to figure out, right, who is leading, or who are the people that we need to sit down with in a room to say, how are we going to ride this wave? Because, I mean, I don't know who they are. I know you, and I know John, and I know some usual suspects, but it doesn't feel like there is sort of any accord. So what does that mean, or how do we ride the wave?
That's an excellent point. Go ahead, brother.
You're going to take. Well, I was going to take that real quickly and just state that we have to do amongst ourselves what Misha Poor is getting paid to do for WVU. No diss to Misha Poor, okay? But for WVU, they do in the diversity, equity, and inclusion, and she's in a position to administrate that. Now, it's my position that we should be able to set up something like that and deal specific, like a black think tank that Reverend Watts alluded to later, that deals specifically with our issues and has the ability to recommend appropriations and develop tangibles for us. That's the word that I want to make sure I got out. The word from the grassroots is we need some tangibles. Okay, not a promise, but some tangibles. So I just want to state that on the record.
Excellent point.
Go ahead.
You're on point. I mean, we need some tangibles. We need some specifics. We don't need just another task force, another work group, another committee. We need to get something that's going to be tangible. The illustration I use about, feeling, seeing, catching, and riding the wave, to apply to this situation right here. All right, so let's think. We got this pandemic. We have the research that's saying that blacks are more vulnerable because of the underlying conditions that we often have health-wise. The expert says that West Virginia still potentially is the most vulnerable state for COVID-19 because of the age, the poor health, the poverty, et cetera, and blacks are the poorest and the most healthy in the state. And then we got the American Medical Association's declaration. Add to that, we got the article done by Joe Severino a few months ago where he pointed out the fact that for 6 years the legislature has refused to pass a bill that would create the Minority Health Advisory Task Force. Not only have they refused to pass it, they refused to even entertain it in committee. And then if you go and look at my Facebook page from May the 19th when I gave this major address, and I showed the 20 years of neglect on behalf of the legislative and executive branch of government. And we put all of this together. We make this compelling case, and now it's topped off by the American Medical Association. So the movement could be, we got to get every community, people in every community got to realize your health is important. And where you live, right, your health is being compromised because your city and your county is not invested in your community and the way they should. So you've got to start shouting it at that level. Then we got to combine and bring it all the way up to the state level and even challenge our nationally elected officials. Many of them, people couldn't even call them by name. If I were to ask the majority of black people in Kanawha County, who represents you in the new United States Congress from the 2nd Congressional District, they couldn't tell what their life depends on because the man never shows up, is never down here, they don't know who he is. And he's going to his 3rd term in office, all right? His second and third.
Insanity.
It's insanity. So here's what I'm saying, how we take advantage of this, Crystal. So now, this legislative session is getting ready to come up, and we start beating the drum. We want the West Virginia Office of Minority Health. Most people don't realize in 2012, the West Virginia legislature passed a bill to create the West Virginia Office of Minority Health. It exists. It was given the charge to develop a statewide plan to address health disparities. That is codified in the West Virginia Code. Yet they didn't.
It's under statute. That's under, not to cut you off here, but that's under statute. It's under the state code, the West Virginia Office of Minority Affairs, Minority Health. Correct.
Yeah.
Hey, fellas,
okay.
Let's just. I want to just hold that thought because we have someone calling in, and I'm just learning this technology, and I don't want to lose them. So let's see who's on this line here. Let's see. Hello, welcome to Black by God. Do we have a caller? Okay, well, maybe they'll try back in. I just wanted to make sure. This is a live call-in show, Pastor Watts. We don't have all the technology that you had at the radio station, but we are trying to make sure that it's an open platform so people can call in and share. But, so if anyone is listening and you want to dial back in, the number is 516-666-9488, and we'll try to get you on. Okay, pick back up, Pastor Watts.
Let me quickly finish this point. So what I'm saying is that we need the legislature when they come in, and we need the governor to support this. He needs to send this request himself. Better yet, let me tell you how the government really works. Right? We need to be leaning on the governor because by West Virginia's state code, the governor is responsible for preparing the budget. So the governor's tax secretary and his revenue people, they will tell him, here's how much money we expect to take in during the next fiscal year. And then the governor then gets with they prepare the budget. They tell the legislature, this is how we want to spend the money. They then send it to the legislature. The legislature go through their deal. At the end of the legislative session, the legislature then look at the governor's budget and they decide stuff that they want to put in or stuff that they might want to take out from the governor's budget. They come with the final budget bill, and then they send it back to the governor. The governor gets it back. He has line item veto authority. He can take anything out that he don't want that they put in, but he can't put anything in, right? They have to approve what he wants. So normally they're not going to take out what the governor puts in. We need the governor to put in his budget to the legislature. We want the West Virginia Office of Minority Health to be fully funded, and we need to put a dollar amount, maybe $5 million start out with, right? Because this office now is at Marshall University. That's another little sleight of hand they created. They outsourced the office to Marshall University. It's at Marshall under the Marshall University Office of Minority, the Minority Health Institute under Dr. Anthony Wart. So Wart then, if he can develop a statewide plan. He can create satellite offices if he has the money to do it in areas that have high black populations, and to give him enough money so he can fund projects in those areas. That's what I'm talking about. I'm saying
I like that.
And something tangible. Well, this office funded money so he can create satellite offices where black people live and be able to give funds to those communities to help them do tangible things that they need to do to improve their health. I think that's the opportunity we should everybody in the state around, because now it's not about Charleston. It's about the whole state where black people live. And that's going to be...
We got to produce books.
Here too, Pastor Watts, I'm just going to say also it's also, that's not an initiative that sometimes I hear out in the community. That's not a Pastor Watts initiative. That's a statewide initiative, right? That's not, because sometimes, you know, it does make me very frustrated, right? Because I've been at the Capitol. I know how things move there. And when you're talking about you have to build these relationships, you have to work through the system that exists. There is no other way. We have no power. We are 56,000. Not that we don't have any power, but we don't have any organized power in the 56,000 folks, right? Or whatever the census data number is. And so learning how policy works at a state level, right? We are, you know, Alex, I was very ignorant to the process, you know, and I had to teach myself. And so I understand, you know, that not that I know everything, I just know a little bit, and I don't see us there. And so a lot of times when I see, you know, the initiatives in the 2020 plan, and I think they're brilliant, I have a hard time, you know, there's a big difference in how everybody meets policy. And so funding this minority health office, right, that has nothing to do with, because, you know, that's a statewide initiative. Can you speak to that, please, so that, you know, this is, if anyone's listening, or so that I can understand clearly to share with other people, you know, what this means for everybody.
What it means for everybody is there is a West Virginia Office of Minority Health. It's in the state code by statute. It is charged with developing a statewide plan to address the health disparities that were first identified in 1999 in a report, and has been corroborated in other reports. That office was outsourced to Marshall University by Dr. Raul Gupta, the former Commissioner of the Bureau of Public Health. And Gupta called me when he got ready to do that. He said, the reason I'm doing this, I think that Marshall may be able to get more done than what I can get done here, trying to work through the bureaucracy of government. So he placed on Marshall's campus, he said they may be a little bit more nimble, and they may be able to get something done. So if we can get that office funded, substantially or not, enough, where Dr. Ward, staff he needs, he can create satellite offices in strategic places around the state, because it's targeting minorities, specifically African Americans, because that's the data that we have on disparities. Then he could fund projects in those individual communities, right? And then he could coordinate and help to share best practices. Maybe Charleston did stumble across something, and Ward said, you know what, this might help Wheeling. This might help Martinsburg, help McDowell County. Now, I am the most misunderstood black man in West Virginia, and I'm not saying that trying to be funny, because I can't believe the Himmerly people criticize me and castigate me, and I've never did anything to try to hurt anybody, and have a life, 36 years of nothing but sacrificial service trying to help the community, and I'm always misunderstood. What I try to tell people here, I don't live everywhere. I live somewhere. I live on the West Side, in one of the most distressed neighborhoods in the state. But what I've tried to do is to build a model, and we have a model. It's called the West Side Revive. I will go anywhere in the state and share with people of what we're trying to do to move housing, to move workforce and economic development, youth development, education. I worked on this, Crystal, since you started working for me back in 2001, 2002. And it's the culmination of all that work. We have it in a model. Now, you read the article by Amelia Nicely, the governor's bill, House Bill 2724, supposed to create a pilot project to address poverty, conference community development. I'm not being boastful, but I got to start telling people the truth publicly. I wrote that bill. I wrote it in 2015, and it passed, and then Earl Ray Tomlin vetoed it. We came back in 2017 after meeting with the justice, and he said, if you guys got an idea to work, bring it to me and we'll support it. And they took the bill, and it was introduced and it passed. Read the article what the white girl said. What she says was the bill was to create a model for the state. That's exactly what we were trying to do, to create the model, which we already had created. We just wanted to get funding to get some things done and then give a report and then say these type of things could be replicated around the state of West Virginia. That's what I've been doing, trying to do, since I started Hope Community Development Corporation 5 years ago, to try to create some things that are replicable. I can't help because people talk to me. You know what I mean? I go to state NAACP meetings, and I say, look, I will come at my own dime to meet with people in the community, share with you what we're trying to do on the west side of Charleston. But no one has ever taken me up on it. So but I hear that all the time. Well, that's the Reverend Watts initiative. Well, Reverend Watts has intellectual curiosity. Reverend Watts is a former engineer, and he studies stuff. And he's not afraid to put his ideas out there in the public square. And so I'm always put my ideas out there until the Lord says otherwise, but I'm trying to create something that can help the whole state. But it's no different than me having 5 kids and 11 grandkids. I can't go and feed everybody else's kids. I got to feed my own first and make sure they got a roof over their head and clothes nearby. So I can't go around the state. I got to try to work for these people in this community because I got to see them every day. So I got to advocate for this neighborhood, but I've never did anything at the expense of the rest of the state. And I've never sold the people out. I've turned things down because it might appear that I've sold out in a certain way. And I've always stood strong and stood for the people and put stuff out there and taken the criticism. I'm coming to the end, right, and I want to finish well. And so I'm looking for a group of young people to say, look, I'm going to let you be the repository of all these things I've worked on over these years. And if a few people take the time to look, I'm trying to tell you, everything that people are talking about, in most cases, there's always a structure there to do it, and they don't realize it. Just quick, let me tell you. For example, there's a bill, Senate Bill 573. It's in Article 31, or Chapter 31 of the Code, the Minority Economic Development Bill. It was passed in 2004. Never been funded, never executed, but it's the law. We need to rally around getting funded in it. In 2009, House Bill 2950, 2009, the Neighborhood Housing Economic Stabilization Bill, codified in law, based on the model that Bob Hardy, a friend of mine, created on the west side of Charleston. I took it and worked with Kelly, he and I and some others worked with Delegate Kerry West to get into a statute to use housing as an economic development job training drive in a neighborhood. It was partially funded one time. It's still codified in law. There's education legislation. So you can go in 18312. What I'm trying to stop you, it's already there. And every year we try to get people legislation, but we can't get people to. No, they don't understand because many times, because I hear what you're saying, they don't want to understand. Their assumption is because they wasn't there when it happened, that nothing happened. That's what I'm finding. They think that I'm making this stuff up. They don't, because they weren't there, so they believe that laws have been passed to do certain things, and those certain things haven't been done. I just need a few foot soldiers like you guys, because once you look at it, the laws are simple. They're very simple. They're not complicated.
Well, Reverend Watts, a lot of times we don't have information. You named off several things in our interview with you that, for instance, at one point you named a program that HUD had where someone that was in HUD housing could enter into a new contract with HUD, and the resources that were used for their housing could be a down payment on their own home, which I had thought about. That was one example of
15 years.
Yeah. And 15 years.
Pay the mortgage, use their Section 8 voucher, which they would get to pay for rent, and if they move to the home program, they could use that voucher to pay their mortgage for 15 years.
See, that's proper information that, as a grassroots person, I'd want us to be able to have access to. And a lot of times, if you're not policy-oriented, and I had to learn to be policy-oriented, and it's not something that I necessarily want to go back to, but at times you do have to be policy-oriented, right? I think you have to have policy orientation as well as a protest orientation if you don't receive justice, where you have to be able to strike from both angles where necessary. You understand? I think you mentioned your own personal policy orientation, but do you have a protest orientation? Have you ever protested in a march? Some of that. I know you're old enough to be a part of the '60s generation, just because I participated in the Million Man March, and I also participated in the hate crimes march down there in Charleston back in 2007. And I just want to ask you, as a grassroots community person, do you have that type of background, an activist background?
I consider myself an activist from this standpoint. Let me just ask you a question directly. Because there have not really been any significant organizing efforts in Charleston to really do protests. I participated in a few marches, but nothing that was significant in terms of having a long time impact and a long time, bringing a long time consequence. What I feel like God called me to do, and what He's gifted me to do, and what He allowed me to get education to be able to do, is to do the deep dive into policy issues, to actually shape policy, and then sit down with people who want to learn and explain to them, this is how this is supposed to work. Here's what's not working. So here's where we got to advocate and try to get things to work the way it's supposed to work. So I'm kind of an amateur researcher and an amateur historian. I know how to collect and analyze data, and then know how to articulate that into a policy framework. What I really would like to do, John, and maybe this is something you and Crystal could help me to do, is to actually get together a major Zoom conference and offer it for people all over the state, where we can sit down and let me lay out to them, here is the framework that's already existing to move an African-American agenda in West Virginia. It's already there. It's the Select Committee on Minority Affairs, with 23 findings of facts and 36 specific recommendations that was put together by the Western Legislature in 2003, no one wants to go back and look at. And most people don't realize that the Herbert Henderson Office of Minority Affairs was created based on the findings of the disparities affecting the Select Committee report. And so that a structure in place not being held accountable, and people aren't aware of it. Once people see what is place, they're going to be surprised what's actually already codified in law and not being funded or not being funded, not being executed. That's why Amelia Nicely's article was so important. What she was wanting to show, that a bill was passed in 2017. It was the governor's bill. He had the legislature to introduce it, but he never implemented, he never executed the bill the way it's supposed to be done. And no one has said a word about it. And the article points out, and there are many other. I
just want to see if this caller here. No, it's okay. I'm just learning the technical. Hello, welcome to Black by God. Do we have a caller? Hello, is anyone on the line?
Come on. Do they have to press 1 on their stuff? I think they got to press 1.
Let's give them time. We know that it worked because it worked. Hello?
Can you hear me?
We hear you.
Kind of. A little bit.
I hear him on my end. It sounds like my brother Amaru. That's who it sounds like. Is that who it is? It's kind of choppy. I can't hear him real well.
Do we have a... Let's see here. You want to try back in, and I'll be watching the switchboard. You want to try back in?
Yeah.
Let's see if you'll try back in.
He may have to call from a regular phone.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah.
But Pastor Watts, on this like, you know, how I think that this is kind of a central crisis in West Virginia, and it is messaging and bringing the information to people in ways that they can digest. I mean, there's just no other way around it. You know, we have to meet the people where they are. And I know one thing about my journey into policy, and that was that, and I say this, and I'll say it over and over, that I wish I had paid attention at those early hope days of the work that you were doing, to really learn policy, because, fast forward the last 5 years of my life, I've been trying to figure it out, because even the well-meaning white folks don't want to break it down to you. You got to fight. I have had to really fight to get questions answered, to learn process, to learn policy, for people to give me their inside information. And, I had one lobbyist that she retired. And, before she died, she gave me all her trade secrets. And that was literally before she died, right? I mean, I don't really understand why policy is such a secret language. And it kind of reminds me of, what I always grew up hearing, and that was, if you wanted to hide something from black people, put it in a book. And I think the same thing goes for policy. It's all there, but it's how do we interpret it? So, I'm thinking of ways to help bring that information to people. And so you absolutely have my attention, and whatever I can do to break down some of this, whether we need to create infographics, we need to create, short things. I know Brother Benny just graduated with his, communications degree. I mean, I don't have all those tools, but those are the things that I feel like we need to do, because, all of this information that exists. And also I put Amelia's link to the article that we keep talking about in the show notes. But even that's an example. She did an excellent job. She broke it down. It's there step by step. The white people can read it. They can say, oh, gosh, here's another thing that didn't happen. Oh, gosh, Jim Justice is being Jim Justice, and then move it aside. I just feel like there's when we talk about, John, what's the word that you use? We've been saying it.
Tangible.
The tangibles.
Tangible.
Yeah, the tangibles,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
it's the tangible. So it's like we can no longer just write a story and then tell the problem. We got to tell how we get to the solution, the tangibles. And the solution is that a lot of this stuff is already in code, and we need to get behind. One big, huge thing is funding the Minority Health Office. I mean, this needs to be a poster. This needs to be a campaign. And, we got a caller. Let's see if they're coming back in. Hold on. Here we go. Hello. Welcome to Black by God. Do we have a caller?
Peace. All right. I hear you loud and clear on my end, but do you hear him, Crystal?
Well,
Crystal?
You got to say something.
I heard him.
I'm just glad to be on this show. I hear y'all talking about different things. I'm just listening.
Okay.
Well, glad to have you here.
Now, Sister Crystal, I know this brother. Okay, I know this brother. He's a younger brother, but he's a researcher and he's a student. He studies. I need to ask him a question while we got him on the line, along with Reverend Watts. Okay, and now, Reverend Watts, you mentioned the healthcare disparities, and I had contact with Ed Cabell at the John Henry Museum here in Morgantown. He was an old school coal miner brother from the lower portion of the state that was a professor, Professor Edward. You might have heard of him. But Ed told me at one time during the segregated period, in areas where there was enough black people, they had their own hospital. It worked out better for them. And, when you mentioned resources being possibly appropriated to some type of minority health office, in order to be able to have a tangible, for me, okay, given my own personal experience with healthcare and having assessed it quickly, I would say that having a hospital somewhere where blacks could be treated or referred, a resource center for them where they could get direct accessibility to whatever they need, okay, would be the appropriate measure. Now, and I made a statement, but I want to ask Brother Amaru. does he, in terms of racism, impacting the mental health of black people, which we talked about earlier, okay, that racism has become a national health crisis. And I want to ask Brother Amaru, what's his position on that as a young African-American or more as a black man? What would you have to offer to that?
I'm going to be straight up and be honest. Like, I don't go to the hospital because I believe that God put everything on this earth that's going to take care of my body. And as long as I'm doing the right thing and abiding by God's laws, I'm going to be fine. But when it comes to the government is completely have a sour taste in my mouth when it comes to going to the hospital, even taking my children to the hospital, because they are known to experiment on our brothers, on our black and brown brothers and sisters. So when it comes to racism, you got to look at it as an economic standpoint. You may need help, but you're not going to go to, if I owned a hospital, brothers and sisters aren't going to go to my hospital either, because most of our leaders that look like myself that are ethnic, they don't ruin that. So we got to build that trust first. That's how I feel as a young American.
Mm-hmm. So for the most part, you wouldn't want, from what I'm getting, you don't trust. There's suspicion based upon the history dealing with the establishments, hospitals, and medical health care treatment, as far as you're concerned.
Brother, I'm not looking to be the excuse.
Okay. Yeah. See. So and that's a legitimate concern, because we have a history of that. Now, Reverend Watts, how are we going to now? And I've had to navigate around that. Okay, but I want to ask Reverend Watts, how do we navigate around that from his perspective? Okay, I have my own perspective, and that is that we have to set up a teachers. We have to train black doctors, black healthcare workers, specifically to deal with us. Okay, but that might be something too fantastic. That's why I mentioned the fact that Ed Cabell talked about in areas where there was enough of us, there was actually a black hospital to address our concerns. Monies were appropriated directly to that black hospital. Okay. Now, Reverend Watts, are you familiar with any black hospitals within the state?
There was actually a small, well, it wasn't a full-fledged, there was actually a small black hospital, I think, in Charleston at one time. And I know that there was, the building is still here. Dr. C.F. Hobson had a clinic 1 block over from where I live. And as you went further south, of course, there are black hospitals, because a lot of white hospitals wouldn't treat blacks. So I think there's a short-range strategy and a long-range strategy, right? One of the short-range things we need to do, and I was talking to some people about this today and just can't seem to get traction for it, we need to put out an SOS for all the African Americans that's in the health, mental health, and public health in the state of West Virginia. We don't know who they are. And most of them are around these universities, Marshall and WVU, they're teaching, or they're in these, and we need to kind of pull them together. They should be our mental health and public experts, right? And we kind of should start bringing them in and say, okay, guys, we want to improve the health of black people in West Virginia. What is your thought? Where were you educated? I mean,
absolutely. Absolutely.
That's happening. Okay, so that's one thing that we could do, like ASAP. And to show you how things get co-opted, that's what we asked the governor to do. We asked the governor to create an African-American coronavirus task force of the top health, mental health, and public health African-Americans in the state, and have a few community people to be with them on that task force. Let them provide consultation, technical assistance, education to blacks, right? Let them be talking to black people about what we need to do with corona, how we stay healthy, and those type of things. And then let them provide consultation and technical assistance to the governor's coronavirus task force in terms of things you need to know about really trying to deal with the African American community. You know what they did? They co-opted our idea. They took the idea but didn't do what we suggested. They went and they let Jill Upson, and they appointed the African American coronavirus task force. You do know there's an African American coronavirus task force, don't you?
Yes.
I think I am aware because I think that some of the sisters here in this area were involved with the African American Coronavirus Task Force. Yeah.
And I'm not being critical of those individuals. There's some fine individuals on it, but they're not reporting back to the community. They're not doing briefings to the community. They're having meetings that may not them, but the governor's office is convening meetings. These meetings should be operating under the Sunshine Law, and they should be posting on the Secretary of State's website when these meetings are going to be held, so that anybody who wants to sit in on these virtual Zoom meetings could sit in on them. So that's something.
Hold on, bro. In defense of one sister that I do know here locally, right, that she advised the community through her Facebook page, okay? And I'm not going to even mention her name, but I am going to say that, you know, in lieu of what you said, I'd have to defend her and said that I paid attention to her addressing what was going on with the Coronavirus Task Force on her Facebook page. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I got that out as a balance to what you said. That may have been your experience, but I can't sit here and let you say that without me saying what I just got finished saying. With all due respect to you, Reverend Watts.
I respect what I respect what you said, and I really admire and appreciate you standing for her. My criticism is not of her or the members of the task force. I'm saying the governor's office has the obligation to be communicating to the public about the task force. That's why about the Sunshine Law and notified and advising the public. The burden shouldn't be on those individuals. They're already given their time and their talent to do it. There should be an official communication from the governor's office. As a matter of fact,
Understood.
During the governor's press briefings, there should be a briefing from the African American Coronavirus Task Force. I clarify. I'm not criticizing the people on the task force at all. I'm just showing you how blacks get co-opted. We had one idea we were asking the governor to do. They go and do something else, and then the governor's office is not communicating to the public what is actually going on with the Coronavirus Task Force. And that's the point.
You think a report should have came directly from him?
Absolutely.
And that didn't occur?
It's not happening. He gets press briefed 3 or 4 times a week. That's what I'm trying to say. Let me back up a second. Everybody needs to get on the side. We've unpacked here that people need to take a look at. If they go back to my Facebook page, October 23rd and October 24th. October 23rd, we had a Zoom call with Joe Manchin III, and I asked them, is this a public meeting? They said yes. So I taped the meeting with me in my office and the audio from the phone so the public could hear the conversation. October 24th, he brought back Clay Marsh, the coronavirus czar, and go and listen to that. And we had this conversation with Marsh, and we laid out some specific things. When I say we, there were like 70 African-American people on a call from around the state. And we laid out some specific things. Marsh never came back to us and gave us any report. He took the idea about African-American Coronavirus Task Force that we intended to be accountable to the community, and we intended for it to be African-American health, mental health, and public health officials, and then they co-opted that and selected some people to be on the task force. They would make kind of a private group, which they would say they had the task force, yet not actually come back and report to the public during the public briefings. That's the type of accountability and transparency that's missing here. And again, I want to be careful of this. I'm not criticizing the people on the task force at all. My criticism is for the governor's office and the fact that they're not communicating. In fact, the truth of the matter is the governor wouldn't even mention African American during his press briefings. He didn't start mentioning that Rick Martin and I start texting messages to the reporters that was in the meeting and said, will you ask him this question? And they kept asking the question, are not African Americans a vulnerable population? And finally he started to say that. I mean, it's hard for people to believe what's happening, but when I tell you it's bad, it's probably worse than what I will say publicly in terms of how we're treated. And that's why I believe that this health situation, COVID-19, because it's not going to go away. We're going to be dealing with this probably for all of 2021. And so it's an opportunity to focus everybody's attention on the fact we're unhealthy, we're dying prematurely, we got a lower life expectancy. They've known this for years. They've not taken any steps to try to address or mitigate the problem. And we got to hammer this issue right now because this is the issue that's on the table. And there's going to be more federal money going to be coming in, and something really could be done. So that's why I'm saying we got to see it, ride it, and take advantage of the opportunity.
And you know, at the center of this is what we started talking about, which was how do we organize, you know, our Black folks in medicine, right? Like, we don't know who they are. And I just want to say, and listen, I mean, to anybody listening and to myself, I probably did the hardest thing that I've ever done, and that was to get sober. And getting sober in West Virginia as a Black person was not easy. I'm just thankful that I had, you know, resources around me, and one of them being Pastor Freisen, who connected me to Black medical professionals, right, so that I could really get the care that I needed, so that I could be met, you know, in my struggle with people that understood that racism was also a part of this. So, you know, this is also, I think, part of a public health crisis when we talk about the opioid crisis, when we talk about alcoholism, we talk about all of, you know, the things that branch off from why people are addicted, you know, that's not addressed in West Virginia. And I understand how people, when they don't want to come into the rooms of so-called of AA or NA or any of the other treatment programs because they're not treated, right? Like, they're treated differently. It's just the way it is. And I think that is something that's not talked about, that is so heartbreaking for me because, you know, I want to say, I have said it to people before, like, come on, let's just, you know, you got to come to a meeting, or we got to do this. And then it just turns out, excuse my French, Pastor Watts, but just to be some more white people shit. And it's so heartbreaking because the recovery community, the Black folks, are left out. There are a few programs, but even in those programs, I don't see the branches out into the broader community. And to me, as West Virginia wears this opioid crisis label, you know, how we're left out of that, you know, that great need, which, you know, I think is just equally as parallel as COVID-19, is how are we going to help people through recovery, because recovery is a mental health issue. It has all those branches. So, you know,
right.
That's near and dear to my heart. And I see anybody, you know, breaking that down into the community, the mental health, the recovery piece of it. I see lots of money going to all these other programs, but you know what? I wouldn't send my brother to those programs because I know how he would be treated once he was in those programs, you know? And you got to have a really thick skin to go through something like that and to be able to navigate through, you know, literally, the racism that exists. And that's not all of them, but you just got to, you might get lucky. And I don't think that we have a chance, you know, to just get lucky and get in the right program or around the right people that understand that. So, you know, when I think of unifying the Black community around, you know, medical professionals, I want to be able to go to a website, click a tab, and find out who's the Black mental health professionals, who can help with recovery, who can help with this. So I don't know if that's something that we can organize forces around or not.
I can speak to that a little bit with my own experience real quickly. I'd say back in maybe 2001, I want to share a quick story to relate to that mental health care issue. I was breaking up with a woman, and I wanted to get myself evaluated. And I had a contact at the Center for Black Culture and Research at WVU, Dr. Catherine Bancoli. She connected me with Dr. Larry LaFleur. I had myself evaluated and assessed because, again, I was coming out of a difficult relationship. But I went and seen LaFleur, and I told him that I had been evaluated previously by the Department of Rehabilitation, and I got them to admit that racism was part of the condition that Black people, it impacted our livelihood at that time. This is like in the early 2002, 2004, I think. And LaFleur was an African-American healthcare professional that was referred to me by Dan Coley. He wasn't originally from West Virginia. He was from Texas, okay? LaFleur told me that during his time in West Virginia, his wife had become severely depressed. And he said, man, I couldn't do nothing for her, and I'm a psychologist myself. And they had to bring in a specific specialist to deal with her as a black woman, to deal with her issues, what made her have to go through depression. He said the depression was brought on because she was from Texas or Mississippi, in an area where when she went to the store, she had access to black people and things were cordial. And coming to Morgantown was a cultural shock for her, compounded with the racism that she's seen and not seeing successful people after having been in an area that was a black community. Okay. Long story short with that, I want to say that that's a model or example, and we do need something specifically set up, because here's a black psychologist that I was referred to giving me his anecdotal information about how he was not able to help his own wife as a result of the racism that she felt, or the awkwardness. I would say it would be racism, though. And so, so it is an emergency situation. However, we can gather those resources. I think we can possibly use, there are certain black doctors within the state I've had contact with. There was one sister down at ACA, down in Charleston, that was a doctor down in that area. There are several here at WVU that come and go over. So they're here. It's going to take effort. And we got to let people know that this is what we're looking for, because they're connected with one another, just like the lawyers are connected with one another. Okay, so I have some names, okay, and maybe these names that I have, I'm going to dig them up, and maybe you guys might know those names, because there was a sister that was a black doctor down in Charleston. She may not be there today, but she was there, say 15 years ago. Okay, so go ahead. Excuse me. Now she was a black doctor. She was a black. I think her name was Tanisha Doctor. As a matter of fact, I have a videotape of her that I uploaded to my YouTube page, from back at that time, where she did a lecture on African American diet, how we should change our diet. It was called Body and Soul, and it was conducted through the West Virginia Minority Health Care from down in Charleston, Pamela Minima. I worked with her daughter here in this area years later on the North Central African American Health Coalition. So since that time, I hadn't heard anything else for. So when you mentioned that there was a specific code set up, which in the state code, which allowed for the possibility of funding and the appropriation of funds that just hadn't been properly accessed, I thought about that, because I had some contact with them early at one specific time, and I haven't heard anything else from them. Have you?
Before you move back to California, Dr. Ron McCowan, a highly esteemed African-American electrophysiologist. There's not a few of them, but a couple of them in the state of West Virginia. He had revived the West Virginia Black Medical Society, and he invested a lot of time and a lot of his own resources trying to build this network of health professionals around the state. And they would have annual conferences to try to get them connected and bring them together. He tried to do things at the legislature, try to move them forward. But once Dr. McCowan left, I don't think there was anyone that really picked that up and maintained it. So here's what I would say before I close, in terms of what it's just a great challenge that we have as African Americans in West Virginia. Being a native of West Virginia and having spent all but 18 months, less than 2 years of my life here, 2 years I've been in. I think that our state, the African American community, is probably more disconnected and fragmented, compartmentalized, and divided up into all these little tribes more than any time in history, in my lifetime, my 60 years, more than any time in history. Secondly, that community, the institutions that have been the bulwarks that have served as the foundational, stabilizing pillars for the African American people in West Virginia have never been as weak as they are now. Whether you look at churches, you look at the NAACP branch, state NAACP, wherever you look, you find institutions that almost are on life support. We have very little institutional capacity. We no longer have a higher education institution that really sees as its mission to focus on issues affecting African American people, even though we have 2 historically black colleges in the state. We have no institutional capacity, and that really kind of cripples us. We can't go to a single higher education institution where anyone is doing any serious research about what's happening in African American people in West Virginia, about what's happening in West Virginia. Of late, and I give her credit, my friend Dr. Lori Andrus, she certainly tried to use her talent and her skills to bring attention to the issue of infant mortality in West Virginia. She's written about it quite prolifically, lectured about it. She did a big project to try to help bring attention to her here on the West Side of Charleston. So here's what I say, and this sometimes kind of gets me in trouble, but I think sometimes you've got to try to be respectful and you've got to be tactful, but you've got to say some things that are hard to be said. So where are the black medical professionals? Where are they in this pandemic that we're currently in? In a pandemic where everybody knows that we're the most vulnerable of people as black folk, and West Virginia is the most vulnerable black state. Where is their voice? Why aren't they talking about things? Why aren't they having press conferences? Why aren't they holding virtual things on Facebook? I mean, that's a question that begs for a response. Well, where is the Mountain State Justice with all this injustice that's taking place in the state of West Virginia against black people? Where is the group of black lawyers that's been in existence for a number of years? Where are they? Because we certainly need their legal expertise at least to help us to frame some of these issues from a legal standpoint. You see where I'm going? We have no black community in West Virginia. That's the problem. There is no community. Yeah. Well, it doesn't exist. You guys are doing because you guys are trying to pull together a community around this venue. But as I come to the end of my career, that's the thing that probably saddens me more than anything. That after over 30 years at doing this work, we are no closer to trying to work together. We look for reasons to fall out over something that has nothing to do with the problem that we have on the table, over just simple personality things, right? So right. I'm hopeful, and because I've always remember the words of Mr. Brian Stevenson. I mean, powerful guy. And Stevenson says that we must remain hopeful because hopelessness is an enemy of justice. If you get hopeless, then you stop trying, you start putting forth the effort. But we've got to find a way of coming together. And I'm saying that I'm gonna send you guys an email. I thought y'all had y'all on that chain. I'm gonna send you something. I sent on the email yesterday, and I sent it to 60 African American preachers around the country. So far, I've heard from one. Just got an email from one, a friend of mine in Huntington, say he received it. I sent it out to 40 some other individuals that I know that's involved in social justice and trying to move things forward. 130 some people all together. And you guys will get up to 140. And basically what I'm laying out, this issue right here, this health challenge that we face, isn't it an issue that should bring us together? Because our people still potentially die, not only get sick, but they could die at disproportionate rate. This virus ain't going nowhere. This thing ain't even reached the peak.
The other thing is age 61 is the life expectancy for a person that lives on the west side, black or white. I mean, that was I thank you for your email. I did receive it and shared it. But, in there was the article about the cities across West Virginia that have the lowest life expectancy in the country. And it's shocking to know. Right. So 61 is the age, right? The life expectancy for a person, black or white, living on the west side of Charleston. And that right there, thinking about Joe Biden is 78 years old, right? Like that, how much, life is lost, in these social determinants of health, and because the governor can't fund. And when I said this is so interesting, the app that I was telling you all about, Clubhouse, basically I was kind of laughing because what we're doing right now is kind of a bootleg Clubhouse. It's kind of this is how it works. But last night, someone asked Bishop Jakes, right, about the role of the black preacher and the role of the black church. And he was breaking it down that, the black church held a role in the past because it was out of necessity. We didn't have, the black congressional caucus. The black church had to serve as the school, as it had to serve as a purpose because that's where the people were, and that was the function of it. And now we don't have that. He posed a very interesting question. He said, what about, now that we have these sort of mega churches and people have gone off into, all these other spaces where they have white pastors, right? So, we've sort of lost, in a sense, the role of what the past of the black church was, and who is, quote unquote, a black pastor today. And, he posed all these things, but the central tenet was, and this is where, I'm kind of glad that in my lifetime, I do have a witness of something as simple as West Virginia State University being a black university, and I have witness of, the pressure that black professors and such at that black school put on me to, to dot my I's and cross my T's. And I think that's a bit of we're a bridge generation, in a sense, of a lot of things, and the role, right, of the black church and leadership, and how important it is for people to have leadership and to find spaces where they can work together, and how it's very challenging in West Virginia, because I feel like I'm a person that tries, and looks for resources and can thread myself through different spaces, and I think that this is where what you're talking about, like the disenfranchisement within the state, is literally going to kill us, like literally, if we don't get behind.
If I can respond to that just quickly, what I'm trying to say is that the need, and I will say the black church, and there are other religious institutions, but the black church is still the largest institution that black people are connected with in this country, religious or even non-religious. The need for the black church to play a similar role to play from its origin on the slave plantation. And I would like to say, and it can be debated, that the black church really is the only true American institution, because it was created out of the necessity of what black people are going through, and it embraced some of the African traditions and African cultures and so forth, become the city refuge. What I'm trying to say is that we are abdicating the role that we need to play. We need to put on our prophetic mantles and be prophets and speak prophetically to the issues of the day. Our communities need for us to be doing more than weddings and funerals and preaching services on Sunday morning. We've got to be able to speak to the issues that are taking place in the public square. We should have members of our congregation that are conversant in these issues so they can educate our people. I beg to differ with Bishop T.D. Jakes, and I got the greatest respect for him, is that we need to play that role, because most black churches are not like the Potter's House. Most black churches in America really are less than 100 people. They're small. You go to these larger churches, they're small churches. They're still parishes. The black church is the only institution in the state of West Virginia that's owned by black people. It's the only institution black people actually decide who leads it, who actually finances it and pays the bill. It's the only institution that really can independent. I have great respect and great appreciation for the Grace Bible Church because that church has supported me even when they disagreed with me. They wish I wasn't so controversial. They wish that I wasn't so militant. I'm not at all militant. When you speak the truth in West Virginia, you're black.
Right.
We're in the wilderness in this country. And in all respect to Bishop T.D. and those guys, those mega ministries, I hear them saying nothing. And they have these pulpits, and they're able to speak to thousands of people, millions of people every day. And one of my hobbies is to come back and listen to what they're airing on these national programs. And I'm telling you, from white pulpits and from black pulpits, it's actually like we're not in a pandemic. It's business as usual. It's business as usual. And I'm not picking on Jakes. They selling tapes, selling Brooks, playing in cruises. It's business as usual. So what I'm saying in West Virginia, if you look at the state of West Virginia right now and really kind of where we are, the only institution in this state that black people have any control over are the churches that's scattered in every village, in every hut, in every hamlet around the state. And that's why I'm trying to reach out to as many African-American pastors as I can and say, will you pay attention to this one issue, this health issue? Will you just pay attention to this one issue? And that's what I'm trying to say, ladies and gentlemen. And that's the point I'm trying to make. Now, I'm not trying to be argumentative, but I want to know where's the black elite? Where are the black professionals? We need for them, right, to come together. If they don't want to be with us common people, just come together and be with each other and put forth ideas. Lend your voice, right? That's the last thing I want to say. The greatest divide right now in America, it is socioeconomic. The black elite professionals are as separate from black, poor, everyday people as white people are. And no one wants to say that. They live in a whole different foreign world. And they really are not connected to the pain and the suffering of everyday black people. Because if they were, I think that they would be crying out more louder than what they're crying out. And they would not just have these mutual admiration societies. These groups need to be challenged, these fraternities, these sororities, these lodges, all these different groups. I know they do wonderful things for each other, and I know they give out turkeys and stuff at Christmas, but we need for them to engage in this titanic struggle that we're in for the survival of everyday black people. And I was talking to some people the other day about, I said, guys, fairly, in our school, how do our kids have a chance if a principal on a whim, because the teacher said they did something, they can suspend them? And that's happening, right? So basic fundamental things, right? Our kids are being denied an education. It doesn't seem to have us up in arms. We don't seem to be alarmed.
Well, now that right there, now I'd say automatically I was in a community in Pennsylvania where they had intervention in before you suspend a child. There's intervention. You might send that child to another area where they would have one-on-one, or a smaller area where other people that had been suspended would be there. It's an intervention stage. Now, I'm sure that they're in Charleston. They don't just suspend black children or any children, just boom, first time, boom, you're gone.
Yes, they do.
You don't get that.
Yeah, you do. And that was one of the reasons that my middle child that's transgender was suspended from school. And if I had a good sense, if I had the sense that I have now, I would have taken a different action. But what I chose to do was say, I'm not messing with this school system. I just started homeschooling her right then and there because I understood that the reality was I have a black transgender child in a West Virginia school, knowing the statistics. This is defended on the first act, right? That this was going to be a repeat thing, and that wasn't a fight I was worth taking, So we figured out a way for me to homeschool, which was actually kind of no different than what the kids are doing nowadays. teaching online, using online curriculum. But, I knew what the odds were. I could either fight the school system, right? Or I could just do the best that I could to make sure that my child got the education that she needed, because it was, you got to pick your battles, and that wasn't one that I was willing to fight. But that was a first offense, full suspension, for something that was just absolutely, not even worthy of a suspension.
Pastor Watts says the data. Not to interrupt you, though, but Pastor Watts has said that the data from suspension directly leads to prison, which is some updated data that I don't think we had previously had. That data that he mentioned in reference to suspension leading directly to prison.
One of the most recent studies done by professors from Bowling Green State University and from Eastern Kentucky University, and they did a longitudinal study over a number of years, and they were quite shocked. And they concluded that school suspension is the most significant event in the life of a child that places them on the schoolyard to prison yard pipeline. It is the most significant. And they said they had underestimated it. You see what I'm saying? And what it actually does to a child. And so if you could forward John that information that you got the email, and I'll double check. If I have his email, I'll send it to him. I was just going through emails and trying to people that and send it. But I include an article in that, John, that this will help you to get up to speed what we're trying to do, and then I'll send you guys the packet. But this came to my attention back in 2015 when the University of Pennsylvania issued their report, and Ryan Quinn, the education reporter of the Gazette-Mail, did this extensive article. The fact that West Virginia was in this report with the other 12 southern states for having this severe problem of excessive discipline and disproportionate suspension and expulsion. And West Virginia suspends blacks at about twice the rate that they're suspending whites. And what the data shows is that white children, when they get suspended, is normally for committing a definable act. They did something. They fought somebody. They skipped. They did a rule. Blacks get suspended not only for those things, but they get suspended for subjective things. They were disrespectful. They were incorrigible. They had an attitude. And then the state school board did one of the most egregious things that you could imagine. They changed the school policy, basically saying, okay, under the old policy, suspended days, when the school suspended a kid, that suspension accounted against the school's attendance. Who has a goal, they want to have 95% attendance or whatever, it counted against their attendance. If a kid were suspended for a low-level violation, right, what the school board did, they changed the policy to say to the child that a principal at his or her discretion can suspend a child for the lowest level violation, a level 1. They can suspend them, and it not count against the school's attendance record. So now there's no incentive. If the principal wants to suspend them, he or she can suspend them. But let me tell you what I found out that was even more alarming. I went to the former Kanawha County School Superintendent before he retired, Dr. Ron Doran, and said, I would like to have a report on how many children were suspended for level 1 violations last year. And I want to see it broken down by race, by gender, by ethnicity. I want to see, how many going out the door. You know what he told me? He said, I cannot tell you. I said, why can't you tell me? He says, well, when the principal makes the decision to suspend, the school board policy allows them to raise the offense to a level 3. That's the second highest, most severe offense, a level 3. So it's entered into the system like they committed a level 3 offense when they actually committed a level 1. So you don't know. So that'd be like me having a simple traffic ticket, and I go to court to pay the ticket, and I get there, and the judge say, okay, Watts, we're going to raise this to a felony. I mean, without due process. That's the system that they've actually created, and that's statewide. So, but the thing is, it's a phenomenon all over the country. But the 13 southern states are some of the most egregious. And when you look at the prison population in the 13 southern states, you'll find they also have some of the highest rates of incarceration at the juvenile and at the adult level. So we think that this issue could become a national issue under the Biden administration because Congressman Cedric Richmond, who's from the 2nd Congressional District in Louisiana, has been appointed to be President-elect Biden's senior aide over public engagement, et cetera, a lot of domestic stuff, right? Richmond writes a very powerful foreword in the University of Pennsylvania's report because Louisiana is tied for Mississippi with the highest rates of expulsion. So 50% of all the kids expelled from school in Louisiana and Mississippi are blacks. And Louisiana, they're probably about 3rd or 4th in suspension. Mississippi, 75% of all kids suspended from school in Mississippi are black. So this is a problem. I think we got a chance. That's why I'm trying to get these other two issues, health and education. They have to put at the top of the.
I just want to say we've got about 3 minutes left, and you know once it shuts off, it just this platform just shuts off, and go ahead and jump in and just say thank you. I just appreciate holding this space and learning with you all and thinking of ways that I could add my voice to the solution or to the John. What do we call them?
Tangible, to the tangible, and
I don't know why.
To the tangible. Now, and for real, now I see housing as one of the tangibles that we could look back and say tangible in the sense of acquiring equity, bridging the wealth gap disparity, and as far as I'm concerned, acquiring equity, home ownership that you can pass from one generation on down to the next generation. Generational wealth.
I think
that's a tangible.
We only got a minute, so we got to wrap it up. But I feel like something that we can maybe find a space for as we're coming together is to talk about the tangibles. So Pastor Watts, you got 1 minute. What do you?
I think I'm just trying to bring attention to the fact
right
that
now.
What they can do right now is they can go to their mayors and their people at commissions and say, declare that racism is a public health threat, write a letter to the governor's office, and be prepared to lobby the legislature to allocate money to fund the minority health office.
All right.
Okay.
Well,
and then minority health office is then going. Look, minority health office, then we got to depend on them to delegate the funds out to people fairly. But, you understand what I'm saying? I question that because, see, that's political. I think we got to be, I like what you said last week when you talked about we got to hit them from both angles. Where we don't depend so much on.
What's your tangible, Brother John? You got 60 seconds. What's your tangible? What can people do
tangible,
right now?
Right now, I'd say raise our own funds and pool our own resources amongst each other and challenge the corporations to match what we raise for ourselves. That's visionary, but that's yeah.
And they need to call you and start linking up because each one reach one.
Pooling our resources. We got some advertising work to do to be able to let people know what we're really. Our cause is what we're really asking for, what we're really demanding. So we got more work to do. But I appreciate Reverend Watts for taking his time out. And again, I appreciate you, Crystal, for giving us a platform.
Oh, I appreciate everybody. I think Brother Amaru is still hanging with us. So we appreciate the witness with us.
Yeah. Well,
and I think we're out of time.
Good evening.
Hey.
Good evening. Thank you.
Again, peace to you, Brother Amaru, Brother Watts, Reverend Watts. All right.